is now 11 o'clock. Would you please rise, face the flag for 11 bells. Saluting the American flag in their after Star Spangled Banner. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing with the Star Spangled Banner. I knew this was coming, and I've been listening to some YouTube clips of explanation. It's an important time for us, sometimes overlooked. But today, we are gathered here to honor our brave soldiers and their families who served and fought with great dignity for our country. Many gave their lives, the ultimate sacrifice, in order for us to continue to keep this country and our communities free with all the rights and liberties that we still have. Let's take a moment to silently bless our fallen soldiers in World War I. Dear Lord, as we are blessed to have this opportunity to gather today, we ask that you continue to bless our soldiers, our veterans and their families, past, present, and future. And we pray today to open the hearts of all men and women, especially our leaders, to one day put an end to all war. God bless our soldiers. God bless America. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a unique time. All over America right now, those 11 bells were being rung. World War I was a sad, sad time. We weren't in that war. This was not our war. This was a European war. We got dragged into the war, frankly, because Britain was losing, and that's the only reason. But as a matter of fact, Woodrow Wilson, our president at the time, ran under a ticket. He kept us out of war. The war broke out in 1914 as a result of the assassination of an archduke. And what occurred, very simply, there were a lot of secret alliances that were being done in Europe. Unfortunately, what happened was the French were attacked by the Germans as a result of this. A lot of people don't know it, but the English House of Windsor really wasn't the House of Windsor. It was part of the Habsburgs in Germany, but due to the fact that we were at battle, the English were at battle, they changed it to the House of Windsor. So what occurred very simply was that the war was not going well. This was our great age. It was our great age right around here in the Delaware Valley. This is why I have so much interest toward this. It was our great age around the Delaware Valley. We were in the Industrial Revolution. Look at what we had. Camden Ford, New York Shipbuilding, the Navy Yard, the Philadelphia Navy Yard, the starting of Victrola, the RCA project, Esterbrook Penn. There's a lot of printing that was done in this area. All this was being done, but Runnemede itself didn't exist. Runnemede was part of Center Township, and basically most of Runnemede was about 6 or 7 farms. that a lot of people may remember you probably remember the names more than will the farm. But we had the Rowan farm, which was really now where the Toyota is. We had the Zane farm, which was where the 3rd Avenue or the Clements Bridge is. Ashbrook still had the remnants of what was across the street from my offices there. We had the Glover farm, which is where Triton High School was. We had the Payne farm, which was immediately behind me. And you can go through these. And these were basically farms that we had. Very few housing. Most of the housing took place in the 1920s, 1926 or so. That's when you saw Bowers Avenue, Oakland Avenue, Reed Avenue, some of the bungalows. We had the Johnny Bowers houses. You'll see there were 2-story houses. There's the hair fellow right behind Luigi's restaurant. It's a Johnny Bowers house. But these weren't there. The people who lived in Runnemede were part of Center Township, and they were farmers. All of a sudden, come 1917, we were called into war. We were not prepared for war. We only had 475,000 active duty soldiers across all the branches of service. Fortunately, President Theodore Roosevelt, who had passed on as president but was still active, recognized that we were going to be pulled into this war. The reason being is he saw that we were providing munitions to the English forces. And he started what was known as the Plattsburgh Plan. Came out of Plattsburgh, New York, in which he was taking, and this sounds like reservists, he was taking business people on weekends, and some of them were in Plattsburgh, a lot of them were in this area around here. As a matter of fact, we had 35 military installations in New Jersey at the time, and he was training these business people to be officers, so that in the event of a war, they would have leaders. Sounds like reserves, doesn't it? Okay, and that's exactly what it was. But he had the forethought, so that when we were pulled into war, and a lot of people think it was on account of Lusitania. Well, Lusitania was an excuse. Okay, what happened was Lusitania was a British vessel. The U-boats were just starting. They blasted the Lusitania, saying that it had munitions, and in fact it did. And later on, they found about 165 Americans were killed at that time. That brought us into the war. That was the, I won't call it an excuse, it was the rationale to say why we had to go to war. And at that time, understand that the Germans had been fighting for 4 years. They were tired. They were very tired. The English were tired. The French were tired. But all of a sudden, the Yanks are coming. You hear the song, the Yanks are coming. These were fresh forces. These were trained forces that were coming over to end this war once and for all. With our allegiance to England, our allegiance to France, it wasn't long that this took place. But it was a horrible, horrible war for us. Number one, we did not have the materiel in order to fight the war. Most of what we were doing was supplying shells to the German or to the English in order to shoot at the Germans. Okay, now we didn't have a whole lot of stuff ourselves. Yet we're putting our fellows over there. They were using old equipment, and along comes gas. Okay, initially they had the nerve gas, then they had mustard gas, which was the bad one. The mustard gas, the problem with the mustard gas is it stays. And when you touch something with it, it stayed with you. This was a horrible thing. That's what really flipped the whole world against the Germans when they turned the gas on. But this was trench warfare. People saying coming out of the trenches, or over the trenches, or in the trenches, I'm in the trenches. You hear some of these words that they even use now. Give them the whole 9 yards. Where did that come from? The whole 9 yards came from machine gun. There's 9 yards on the machine gun belt. And when they opened fire, it says, give them the whole 9 yards. That's where that all came from. Well, our guys were not particularly ready for this. We had the Great White Fleet, which I'm very proud of, to be honest with you, because of 2 reasons. Number one, because my status as treasurer of the battleship New Jersey, which was the second New Jersey. But we had the White New Jersey, which was later scrapped in 1918. But we also had the Olympia. My grandfather served on the Olympia. He was a blacksmith on the Olympia, and that was during the Spanish-American War. The Olympia is the oldest steel-commissioned steel vessel in the United States. It sits right over in Philadelphia. We can actually see it. So I'm kind of proud to know that this was around. But what happened is that when they came into this, they had no intention of understanding what the warfare was. And what was happening is we were firing 600 shells a day in order to get 10 feet of trench. And how long can you think that can last? But fortunately, the Germans were in worse shape than we were. So along comes 1918, November 11th, and there was a little story a lot of people don't know about the day before the armistice. It was kind of told to the English that they were going to win the war. Well, there was one problem. There was a German captain who they were called trench captains. Trenchhausen was their name. And the drunk cop, and he was upset because he was losing the war. But they also had British captains in the trenches. And this British captain was quite upset that he did not have the body count or the prisoner count that the rest of his battalion had. And what he did was he said to his men when they went out to the trench for the day, come back with a corpse or come back with a prisoner, but if you're going to come back at all. How do you go there? And by this time, believe it or not, they weren't really fighting. The soldiers themselves were exchanging cigarettes and across the trenches. It really wasn't as but they had to do something. So what did this British guy decide to do? Very interesting. He played a German nationalist song. The Germans thought that they had won the war. They stood up and saluted, and the British opened fire on them. Okay? So we're not the nicest people in the world sometimes, you know. I mean, when you hear these kind of stories, I mean, it's not. But this is what really occurred. So I mean, there's two sides to every war. But when we came back, our soldiers came back. There were 50,000 were actually killed in combat the year itself, but another 50,000 died of influenza and disease and whatnot because of the trenches. Can you imagine being in the war during the time of this muddy trenches? And we weren't ready for that. But this was the war to end all wars, and it was going to be over and done with. Okay, so the armistice was signed, and what's interesting is Ferdinand Foch, who was the commander of the French forces, demanded that the armistice be signed in France. They went to a rail car in France. The Germans came in and signed it. Folks stood at attention. The English were there. There's a fellow by the name of Patton was there. You might remember a guy by the name of Patton, George Patton. He did quite a bit during the Second World War. I can tell you about that a little bit too, but that's beside the point. But what happened, we had the unit that graduated the United States Military Academy. At that time it concluded Eisenhower, Marshall, Patton. These were all the great generals of World War II, but they were of lower status than World War I. General Pershing was in charge. Pershing was there. And I'll tell you a little story about Pershing. It's very interesting. Some of you may know that Fort Dix is known as Doughboy Field. Okay? The reason it's known as Doughboy Field was very interesting. The troops were segregated at the time. Pershing needed volunteers. He went to Fort Dix, or at that time was Camp Dix, and asked for volunteers. All of a sudden, 10 young men in whites stood forward, African-American men. The commandant said, don't worry about that. He said, what do you mean? So Pershing says, what are you here for? He said, we want to fight. He said, we want to volunteer. He says, can you shoot? He says, I can shoot. He says, you know, would you willing to die for your country? He says, absolutely. He says, give him a gun, I'm taking him with me. 3 weeks later, he came back to Camp Dix. He said to the commandant, you have any more of those doughboys, what you call them, the guys who were stirring dough in the kitchen? That's all. The lowest job they could do was just spill the bread. They were just making the bread. That was it. No fighting. And he said, why? He said, what'd they do wrong? He said, not a damn thing. They're the best goddamn fighters I have out in the battlefield. Give me all you have. That is why the field today is still known as Doughboy Field. That's why we refer to our World War I soldiers as doughboys. Came right out of New Jersey. Right out of New Jersey. So, I mean, we're so deeply entrenched in this, and unfortunately, you'll see several of the names that are on the monument, the early names that are on there were World War I casualties. We haven't had to add a casualty for over 50 years, and I hope we never have to do it again. But we've been fortunate. But it's just so interesting, and then for us to get this cannon, and I have to tell you about the cannon. It's not too cold out there. I have to tell you about the cannon. This cannon was built in 1898. It was actually built by the Germans. The Germans were big on munitions. They sold it to the French when they were friends with the French, okay? The French turned around and started firing at the Germans with it, but the problem was a 38 millimeter cannon. What happened was, by that time, the Germans had 50 millimeters. So this cannon was basically ineffective. It wouldn't go as far, wouldn't do as much damage. So the French, in their wisdom, rifled it out to 50 millimeters so that if they got the shells from the German, if they captured them, they could use the shells again. There's only one problem. It became a hot cannon. What they mean by that is there's not enough metal to insulate the heat, and the cannon would explode. So it only could be fired once or twice, and that's it. It had to cool down. It was given to the American forces after the war to take back as a trophy of war. It came back at Camp Kilmer, which is up in North Jersey, central Jersey, and it laid there for many, many years. Nobody bothered with it. In 1952, it was taken over to the it was in 1932, it was taken to the American Legion in Clement, and it stayed there for about 20 years, and all of a sudden, for some reason, that Legion closed down. The VFW got it in 1952 here in Runnemede. I came upon this during our 25th anniversary, and I knew it had a history behind it, and thank goodness for the town of Congressman Rob Andrews. Because Rob came right up to them. We spent a whole day on the phone getting the history of this. This cannon is still owned by the United States Army. It's registered out of Terre Haute in Illinois, Terre Haute, Indiana. And guess what? It's supposed to be in front of the VFW. We're getting it over there. We had to stop here for a couple of years. But when push comes to shove, it's supposed to be in front of the VFW. But we convinced them that this was veterans' green, so that's okay. That's why this cannon is here. It was restored, and I want to point out, Harvey's behind Pat Passio there. Harvey did this in memory of his daughter, and I'm telling you, you don't know what it cost. It's worth about $20,000 for the taken right down to bare metal. Original colors were on there, and he presented it. We brought it up. I remember the day it was there, but it's there for our presentation. And just to add this memorial, I just felt like, and you guys might remember, Memorial Day, I came up with this. Everybody's on top of Armistice Day today. Nobody remembered that back in May, but I realized it was the 100th anniversary. I wanted to do something. I wanted to do something for this community so that it would stay forever. There's too many times it's not staying there forever. And what happened very simply was I suggested the memorial. Folks, I want to say this too, for what it may be worth. This memorial was built without one penny of tax dollars from Runnemede. Everything was donated. Every dime was donated. That's a hell of a thing to say, because that's our people, our citizens, coming forward, saying, what can we do for this? I had people asking to donate, okay? And I said, the smaller the donations, the better I like it. We have a registry. We're going to put it on our honor board in the borough itself. We're prepared to do that. Now, I'm going to ask Freeholder Billy Moan to stand forward if he can, in order to say a few words, and also Mayor Capanos, I'm going to ask you to stand forward and say a few words, if you can, on behalf of them.
Morning. Well, we were listening to Bob. I said myself a few times, we're extremely lucky in Runnemede to have someone with such a wealth of knowledge. Not only here at Runnemede, but as Bob had mentioned, his commitment to the battleship and also his work at Camden County College, I truly believe is helping educate the next generation of history like this today. And I can tell you that when I was growing up in Runnemede and attending the 4th of July parades, I remember this being one of the I remember hanging on it as a kid. I think it was the coolest thing. So it's great to see it here. I will be very brief. I just want to thank the community for coming out. I do remember on Memorial Day the conversations between Rob, Mayor, members of council about dedicating this special, I guess we would call it a plaque, a stone, monument. I like that. I remember that being the case, and I was updated along the way of how far things were coming along, so I wanted to stop by before Camden County's Veterans Ceremony at 1 p.m. today, just to see this thing dedicated. And I'm extremely grateful to have grown up here. I mean, my father, many of you know, is a Marine Corps veteran, so I'm going to be thinking of him and many others throughout the day, but I wanted to just stop by and say hello, and thank you for this testament to the community about what Bob said. Not a single taxpayer dollar went to doing this, and I think that's something very special and something we should all be very proud of here at Runnemede. Thank you very much.
Always show up. Special thanks to the labor chores, Harry and Nick. They sold out. And they were kind enough to show up today in true Marine Corps fashion. I don't think they said they got home about an hour ago, hid out all night, or at least the sun was still charged up the hill. So I want to thank everyone. I really want to thank Bob. I really want to thank Mark. And that's the two gentlemen that's brought me a lot of happy. I appreciate it. Bob, council always want to support anybody who goes there. Get these donations. So thank you.
That's true. Off the record, the mayor said, do what you have to do. You have our support. That's all we need. This time, I'm going to ask the United States Marine Corps to stand for. It was her birthday yesterday, so maybe we can give them a round of applause and have them post the colors, please. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you will note that this is a, thank you, sir. You'll note this is a 48-star flag. The reason being is we went to war in 1917 with 48 stars. We didn't have 50 stars. That was the flag that flew in World War I, World War II, and Vietnam was a 50-star. So I thought it would only be appropriate to have a 48-star flag flying above our memorial. At this time, I'm going to ask Mayor and Council to stand forward, take the commemorative wreath in front, and unveil this monument for the benefit of all of us, please.
Ready? Yes.